to another RPC episode. In this new episode, we want to talk about one of the very most important situations down here for my South Florida folks. For that, guys, that conversation will center around the preparation for hurricane season. Now, this will be a series of videos, and this will be part one, dedicated mostly to how to survive a hurricane. Now, we will continue to make videos based on this series, such as, for example, how to make your bag out bag and what the bag should contain, how to survive an accuracy situation, or how to hey, shit hits the fan, what now? Okay. So for this first video today, speaking strictly about hurricanes, we want to, as an emergency manager for a number of years down here in South Florida, I want to talk to you guys about and give you some resources, some tools, and some knowledge that will help you increase your survivability in a bad hurricane situation. Now, when it comes to hurricanes down here in South Florida, as you may know, hurricanes are quite unpredictable nowadays and highly dangerous when it comes to life and property. Hurricanes usually go from a scale of 1 to 5, category 1 through 5. Category 1, just to give you some quick tips in there, category 1 usually have sustained winds between 74 and 95 miles an hour. From there we go to a category 2 that has a 96 to 110 miles an hour, and then we go to a cat 3 from 111 miles an hour to 130 miles an hour. And then from there we get to the really catastrophic ones. For example, we have cat 4 hurricanes that go from 131 to 155 miles an hour winds. And finally we have cat 5s, which are 155 miles and over. Just to put it into perspective for you guys, Andrew back in 92 was a cat 5 hurricane with sustained winds of 165 miles an hour. Now, if you guys want to see something interesting, and put a link on the video comments below where you can see what kind of damage could you expect with the different types of hurricanes we experience down here in South Florida and throughout the world. So we're gonna center this video. We're gonna split this video in 3 main sections. It's gonna be your pre-hurricane preparedness, what to do during a hurricane, and what to do after a hurricane, depending on how things progress. Now, to begin with the pre-part, it is very important. Number one question you should ask yourself is am I ready, honestly, truly ready for me and my family to survive a hurricane? That is your number one thing, because based on that and the answer to that question, you will have to prepare accordingly. Number one thing you gotta do is, hey, you know what, if I cannot, don't leave, I'm in a bad zone, there's a flood zone, or whatever the case may be for you, you may need to evacuate. And that's one question that you have to pose yourself quite soon in the equation. So let's say, let's start with, we got a bug in, we're gonna stay in the house, we're gonna stay in our place, and how to go from there, okay? So first things first, there's a checklist which is also attached to the comments below. You can use that. It's handy to use. It's a checklist that I created myself, which will help you go through the steps and basic things you will need to survive a hurricane down here in South Florida. Mind you, with little to no alterations, this checklist will also help you out in a multitude of natural disasters when it comes to survival. So let's take a look at it, and if you like it, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. Now, let's start with our bugging options and things that we should consider here. This bugging in section, I have divided it between household preparations and your household inhabitants preparations. So there's things that you're gonna need to do to your dwelling, to your house, to your homestead, that will increase the chances of survival during a hurricane. And there's things that you need to work with your family, the members of your family, to increase those chances of survival. We will start with the requirements or the steps to keep you and your family safe. So for example, what are the main three things that we need in case of a major hurricane? In the military, it's funny, we used to say beans, bandages and bullets. In this case is kind of something similar. So in this case, one thing we need for sure is water, food, and medications. Now, when it comes to water, chances of you losing the water pressure, water access to fresh water when you open that faucet are slim to none sometimes, but it's always good to be prepared. In this case, we recommend, the wider known recommendation about this matter is that you take at least 1 gallon of water per person in your family per day, okay? So if you have, for example, three family members, that will be 3 gallons of water per person per day. So guess what? If you have a 7-day week without water, you will need 21 gallons of water in there. Now, what is also important, guys, if you have access to that water, and this is especially mostly for like, not the portion of preparations before the hurricane or during, but really more than anything for the after, when all that infrastructure has gotten affected by the hurricane, and you have access to water, but it might be clean water. So you have to find ways and have ways beforehand where like you can treat that water to make it safe to drink. Now, you have several ways to do that. The most known way of that is usually by boiling. Also, most of us down here in South Florida, when you look at our kitchens, mostly everything is electric. So that takes us to our next point, which is make sure you have a way to cook or boil water that does not require power. For example, a propane grill, a simple, basic wood fire will help you out with that too. So ways of treating water are really, really important. Maybe by boiling it, maybe with the use of bleach, and even maybe with the use of some kind of filtration device. Some you can buy, and they're not really expensive, and some others you can make yourself. So from there, we move to the next spot, which is food. Now, especially nowadays, you can go out there in the market, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people that offer emergency rations. Now, these foods are mostly come in a big bucket, and it's dry portions of food, usually preserving. So one thing is important to know also is in order to prepare these foods, in most cases, unless the classic MRE style, you will need water to prepare them. So it's also important to account for the water you'll need for food preparation. Usually canned foods or dry foods, canned foods usually a little cheaper, and it's readily accessible in most supermarkets. You can buy those and they have an extended shelf life. Mind you also, if you lose power, perishables need to go first. Save those cans, save those dry goods for later. It will be beneficial for you. Now, the next step for that, next thing we talked about will be medicine. Okay, you really need to have a plan to keep those family members off yourself with the medications that you usually take. For example, allergy medications, over-the-counter medications, or even prescription medications. Just make sure that if there's a storm coming, that you guys prepare accordingly for have those prescriptions filled early, so you have enough medications just in case bad hurricane comes through, and then things get thrown off at the end of the day, and you may not have access to those medications that you need to survive. Like for example, my diabetic guys and ladies, insulin is a very important medication for you guys, especially for the type 1 diabetics. And it's a medication that doesn't like being hot too much. So it's a medication that requires, to an extent, some kind of refrigeration in order to last as long as it can. And that will be something we'll talk about in a few slides from now. But the other important thing will be like, hey, what if after this hurricane everything is so damaged and there's so much chaos going around that I don't have access to basic needs, like for example medications such as antibiotics. Okay, now there's companies out there such as Jace Medical, and guys, we're not affiliated with them in any way, shape, or form, but I have used their product. Jace Medical gives you a kit for you to have in case you travel through a third world country when you have an emergency such as a hurricane where it may prevent you to gain access to antibiotics. So you can go in there and have a virtual visit with a doctor and answering a questionnaire that will and Jace will provide you with the antibiotics you need. You can enter also any allergies you have, and they will find replacements for those antibiotics. So it's a really good product, and I'll add a link down there in the comments as well for you guys to check it out. Now, next thing we'll talk about is, like most of us, you guys have pets most likely. So it's important that you consider your pets when it comes to emergencies such as hurricanes. And the reason why is because most shelters won't take pets. So if you're bugging in, that will probably be the safest thing. But if you have, for any reason, to bug out of your home, you have to ensure that your pets can be taken with you. So you have to plan ahead and make sure that in case that the proverbial shit hits the fan, you need to find a place to go and a place that you can take your pets with. So it is important that not only we account and plan accordingly for that, but also make sure that you have necessities, pet supplies in storage, such as obviously you have to, that water we spoke about. So, well, you need to make sure you have water for your pets. You need to make sure they have food. And if they have any kind of medicine, that you have supplies for that, you have reserves for that as well. Now, something that's also important is, and this is a more in preparation, is what in the case of, because we can be planning for just bugging into in my house for as long as I can, and that's all great, but you have to have a plan B. You have to have a bug out plan B. That means you need to be prepared to bug out at a moment's notice. What happens is, let's say the hurricane takes your roof and you need to get out of Dodge. Well, in that case, you need to have those bug out preparations ready to go at a moment's notice. One of these things will be your bag out bag, and in your bag out bag you have some basic essentials that will keep you or help you staying alive for extended periods of times. There will be a separate video where we're gonna go through a entire bag out bag, and I'm gonna tell you what I have in there for survival. We're gonna go step by step into the bag out, so stay tuned for that. Now, also something that's very important, and these are some basic things. Learn some skills. So skills are important because when you think about emergencies of this magnitude, most of the emergency service will be absolutely bombarded with calls and requests for assistance. Now, it will be up to you and your hands only to make sure that you and your family stay safe. So things as basic as, for example, getting certified in CPR can take you long ways. Okay, emergencies can happen, and during moments like that, we cannot 100% rely on emergency services. You are the first line of defense when it comes to this. So it is really of paramount importance that you teach yourself some skills, such as first aid, CPR, how to collect water, rainwater, how to plant my own food, things of that. Every skill you learn is something that doesn't take any space other than your brain up here, and nobody can take it away from you. So get out there, get training, get certified. Also something that is really important when it comes to this type of situations is finding a way to stay in contact with your loved ones and or emergency services. Think about this. So in many hurricanes down here in South Florida, we noticed before that cell phones are down, and that's because cell phones are things that are based mostly in land-based infrastructure, such as cell phone towers. Those things will probably be one of the first things to go if we encounter a large, massive hurricane. So it's important that you, one, don't depend exclusively on them, but that you find ways to stay in contact. So for that specific purpose, guys, yes, there's multiple ways of doing that out there in the market. You have multiple satellite phone companies. You can purchase yourself a satellite phone. That will, it's not an inexpensive process. Satellite phones are quite expensive, and for the everyday American like you and I, it may not be obtainable. But some things that are maybe obtainable, for example, I will highly recommend you go out there and you get your GMRS radio license. Now, these licenses are, they only cost $35. You don't have to take a test. All you gotta do is go in there on the FAA website and just make sure that you take you pay for this license, that you obtain this license, and that you understand how to use your radios. Now, for example, down here in South Florida, there's a huge amount of clubs and huge amount of open repeaters that you can use with your GMRS radio to stay in contact. Maybe not directly with emergency services, but with all the groups of people that have the same mission as you do. Stay alive, help each other. So GMRS radios are not so expensive. You can buy a pair of those for like $50. And I'll put a link on Amazon below here where you can see the ones that I have, which come with a little flashlight, and the most important things, come with the NOAA channels, meaning you can just plug the thing in and hear your weather alerts, which are important because that will keep you informed if everything else fails. Now, what happens to, we're gonna go a little bit, and we're gonna talk about, that kind of ends that section there for preparation of your family. Now, we're gonna talk about preparing your home for a storm of this sort. Like, for example, down there on the, as I mentioned before, in that description, you'll have a checklist made by me for you to make sure that you go ahead and make sure you are ready for a storm. But it is important to have a household checklist of things that you're gonna check come May 15, right before hurricane season, so you can start making sure that everything, all your ducks are in a row. For example, one thing that most people don't do, and is really, really, really important, is to have a printout of your insurance, homeowner's insurance documents. You want to make sure that you always keep those handy, and if you go anywhere, those should be part of your bag out bag. It's really important. Remember, power may be gone like it happened in 1992 during Andrew. Power may be gone for weeks in a row, okay? So we cannot strictly depend on electronics. We need to have solid printed paper copies of things, okay? So one of those things will be your insurance company, homeowner's insurance policy papers. Also, one thing you want to have, and this is before the hurricane arrives, so this is part of your pre-hurricane preparation checklist, would be to take good pictures of your homestead. You want to make sure that your house, you have good pictures of your house, that you can show the insurance the comparison before and after the hurricane in case you receive any damages, okay? That's really, really, really important. Now, you want to make sure one of the things you do also is a roof and property inspection. You want to make sure that before that hurricane arrives, you go around, you check everything. You want to say, hey, you want to check if there's like some big tree limbs hanging over my house, or there's maybe a section of my roof that is not in very good shape. So you want to make sure that you do that virtual walkthrough of your home and you check for any kind of discrepancies that may become bigger issues during a hurricane. Also, you want to make sure that one of the items that I always have, and you always should keep close when it comes to hurricanes, are tarps. You want to make sure that you have large tarps just in case, because roofs tend to take damage in hurricanes. So what happens if you have a huge hole on your roof, now water's coming through it, and you don't have access to a roofer to come take care of it for you. So you have to go up there and take care of it yourself. And the fastest way to do that is to have some sandbags, which we'll talk about in a second, and tarps, okay? Now, sandbags are a really important thing, especially if you live down here in South Florida, really close to Florida Keys. That just tends to be a big flood area. Now, it is important that you plan and you have those sandbags. There's products out there in the market as well that are these like chemical filled sandbags that kind of they get bigger when they get in contact with water thanks to a chemical reaction. And those things can be lifesavers. Now, it is really important, and there will be a link, another one, down in the description that will talk to you guys about a flood zone map. Now, this is a Miami-Dade County flood zone map. It will tell you, you can look at it, you can zoom it in. It's kind of like a Google Earth type of map, or Google Maps, where like you can zoom in and you can see exactly in what area your address is located. Now, good thing about those, and again, as I said, the link will be included down below, you can print those out, and I do have one. I have a binder with that flood plan, because it is very important that in case you lose power or whatever the case may be, you have access to that kind of information, okay? Now, other thing that is very, very important during a hurricane will be your shutters. I know that a lot of us have individual shutters. We get them in our garages all the time, and then comes storm season. most of us go up there and we just install them. Now, take time and take consideration on the effort that it will take to install those, and plan ahead. If you need any help, if you need a ladder, you have a 2-story home, 1-story home, all those things matter. Now, some of you may have accordion shutters, some of you may have impact windows. Great for you. That's the way to go. Now, something is also really important, especially for not only for food preservation, but also for medication preservation. And these item in particular should be used sparingly. Meaning, don't try to be I would say a typical South Florida resident, which we all know is extremely hot down here. So first thing happens, power goes off, we try to find a way to power our ACs. That is not the way your reserves of fuel and your generators should be used for. Your generators should be used for only to power essentials, and I mean essentials. If you have a large amount of perishables, for example, that you want to keep fresh for as long as you can before you have time to consume them, your generator will be a good source of power for that specific appliance, being a freezer, being a refrigerator, whatever the case may be. Now, in regards of when it comes to like ACs require a huge amount of power unless they're portable. And in most cases, you'll do better with just, if you're gonna use your generator to power any kind of, and I'm talking about portable small generators, I'm talking about like generators capable of holding a whole household for 72 or even longer hours or longer. I'm talking about small generators, guys. And we need to make sure that we use these things, like we're very careful with the use of fuel, because you may not have access to additional fuel after that. Now, when it comes to ACs, you usually end up better if you just, for example, power up a fan, because they use way less energy and fuel than air conditioners will. Now, when it comes to bag out, guys, right? And let's say, for example, at that very preparation, like those first preparations before the storm, bagging out, you may decide that, hey, my household I don't think is safe, I'll be on my own here, I'd rather bag out, go somewhere else. Now, for this specific scenario, for this particular situation, there's places you can go. There's usually Miami-Dade, also linked below. Miami-Dade will offer you guys, they will post shelters and areas where like food distribution centers will be, emergency services, etc., etc., etc. There's a huge amount of resources out there for you from a county and federal perspective that can help you stay safe during the storm. But in the case of bag out, one of the things you should have is, like, as I mentioned before, paper is king here. And not only because of cash, which yes, we'll talk about that, but also because all of your documents need to be with you when you do. And this is extremely important. When you bag out, part of your bag out bag should be a somehow sealed set of documents to include, but not limited to, social security cards, passports, insurance policies, any kind of medical records or anything like that that may grant you a better level of service if you find yourself during a medical emergency. Blood types, addresses, phone numbers, all that kind of stuff that we used to remember back then, but now everything is on our phones. Do not rely on battery-powered devices, because you do not know how long may it take before you're allowed to charge those. And I'll talk about little trick of mine a little bit here, and I hope you guys, if you find it useful. But so first thing is, and as I said, we'll go through that in another video, will be prepare your bag out bags accordingly. Have them always ready. Number two, we'll make sure that if you do have a vehicle, that vehicle is fuel pre-storm. You want to make sure that you have enough gas in that car or that SUV or that truck or whatever the case may be to take you as far as possible from the danger zone may the situation arise. You want to ensure that that car is ready to go and it has fuel on it. Don't be that person who waits until the middle of the storm to then find themselves stuck in a gas station with another 300 people trying to do the same thing. Prepare, prepare, prepare. It's really important. Now, make sure, and again, guys, link below as well, that you know your evacuation routes. It's it's paramount that you plan accordingly and you know beforehand, before the storm gets here, where are you going? What is your plan? Who will be going with you? What will be your fallout plan in case that B location won't work, won't be accessible, whatever the case may be. Again, you may be planning to go to your cabin in the Everglades, but guess what? Everything is flooded now. You can get to it. You need an alternative plan after that. So never, ever, ever plan one specific and only one location. Have alternative locations as well. And you don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to own like a house in the mountains, but you can say, hey, you know what? If my plan, if my go-to place won't work, maybe I'll go to a hotel or I go to the nearest shelter. And that is information that in most cases you will have to have with you, printed in solid paper, okay? Now, another thing that's very important is maps, guys, maps. I know that a lot of us don't like to read those maps. We don't understand anything about maps, but it's paramount because phone service and navigation services may be affected during a hurricane, which means that they will not be readily and reliable for you. So, with that being said, one of the, and I told you guys we're going to talk about this little trick of mine. One thing that works wonders for me is I have a phone that is not connected to any kind of service. It's an old phone, an old Android phone that I will take, I will wipe out, and I will put some important software in there. Like for example, number one thing, offline navigation maps. Maps that will help you get to places without having to connect to any kind of cell service. That is really important. Now, I also use that phone, watch it, not only to navigate in case communication is down, but also to save on them electronic copies of important documents. So I will have my PDF copies of homeowners insurance, insurance card, driver's licenses, birth certificates, passports, and all that kind of stuff is saved to this phone. So I know some of us have like phones, old phones laying around. Make good use of them. Those sort of things are gold when the situation, when this happens. Now, we talk about comms already, communication devices. We talk about GMRS radios. We talk about radios in general. We talk about cell phones. But something that's really important is that you have access to the NOAA weather alerts. Those things are of paramount importance for you to have access to. And one simple way of doing it will be, again, you can use that link provided below to look at those GMRS radios on Amazon. Remember, those radios are licensed, so it is it will befit you to go in there and look at the license before you purchase them. Okay. Now, guys, when it comes to the during, now we went through our preparation measures. We are ready to go. We're here in our house. We're holding down, bunkering down for this hurricane. What are some of the things that we can do? So there's plenty to talk about here in this section. I just want to make sure that number one thing, it's life over property. Always, always, always. Do not risk your life for property. Please, please, please. So during hurricanes, again, hurricanes have the dangers that come with hurricanes. Like for example, high winds, lots of rain, flooding, and because of winds, for example, like things can happen. So your power may go off. Lifelines may drop down on the ground. So you don't want to be. Number two thing is that you don't want to be, walking around. You don't want to be out of your house, out in the elements. That's not safe. It's lots of different things can happen to you, and you're risking your life for no reason at all. Now, if you find yourself in a situation where you really have to say, hey, I'm out of here, I need to bug out, that's a different story. But if not, guys, if it's not a paramount, it's not for real a life or death situation, stay home, okay? Unless you were told to evacuate. It happens here also in South Florida, where sometimes depending on the category of the hurricane that we're facing, some people, especially those that live in either campgrounds, trailers, double wides, or whatnot the case may be, they ask you guys to evacuate because danger to life is extremely high. So from there we'll go to the most essential things, guys. We're staying home. We're staying in. We're not feasting on things because we may have to make sure that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We need to make sure that we plan accordingly, that we regulate and make sure that we don't use our supplies during the stay at home, and that's really important. Now, let's say hurricane goes through, and now we are safe. Now is when the assessment part of the problem begins. You have to make sure that during the aftermath of a hurricane, like, you cannot go back to some of those items that we talked before. You want to make sure the first thing you do when you're capable and safe to do so is you go out there and you do an assessment on your property. You do an assessment on your stuff, making sure that, hey, you don't have now a tree laying over your roof, or like you're missing the front door, or like the whole entire house is flooded. And if that's the case, you may want to take pictures of that and make sure that you keep them with those pictures we took before, just for insurance purposes, and just to be able to offer them a comparison. Now, also, do something really also important is to make a inventory of your supplies. And this is especially important when after a hurricane, one of the situations like the ones we talked before is actually now reality, where, like, everything is, all the emergency services are overwhelmed. There's no power, there's no gas, there's no food, and so many times, like for example, martial law was declared. So in that case, you need to make sure that you have an appropriate inventory inventory of your supplies, and make sure that you can you have what you need in order to extend your survival a little bit longer. Now, there's going to be a different video also. We're going to talk about homestead security. So we're going to talk about like deterrents, alarm systems, and whatnot that will serve you to keep your household safe. But again, that will be a different story. And this will be mostly based, again, if we're found ourselves in a moment where, like, the hurricane caused a lot of damage, there's civil unrest, there's chaos around and everything else. This homestead security video will really help you out to set you up for success, okay? Keep yours and yourself and your family safe. Now, what else? So, now, in the case that we find ourselves in a situation like, for example, during Andrew 92, where like Homestead was highly affected and there was like thousands of houses destroyed, hundreds of people were displaced and whatnot, you gotta make sure that you plan for long-term sustainability. Now, you need to ensure, you need to be aware of how long your supplies will keep you alive, okay? That is really extremely important. Make sure that you know exactly, that you plan accordingly. I would find it as a good rule of thumb to have food for you and your family, including your pets as well, for at least 90 solid days. Now, same thing with water. If you have water, and I'm not talking about just a case or bottle of water, I'm talking about water for your entire family for a good 90 days. And more importantly, how to treat that water, okay? We're gonna go, when we do that video in the bag of bag, we're gonna go to some of the most essential supplies that you should have during a situation like this. Guys, that's all I have. Again, this has been Alex Rivera, your host, and this new video of River's Preparedness channel. Please, if you have any questions, concerns, or whatnot, please post them down in the comments below, and I'll respond to you guys right away. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. See you guys.